FixU.org. My father died in 1995. For years, I thought he might still be alive. It's not that strange. A lot of young children struggle to understand the confusing concept of death. How can someone be here, one day, and gone the next? Maybe the finality of it all struck me the most. I convinced myself that Dad only went away for a while. The priest who spoke at the service filled my head with a misguided idea. He seemed like a nice guy. He shook my hand hard and held Mom while she cried. At the end of the wake, he talked to the guests about my father's life. He mentioned Dad's time in the military, how much he loved his family, and how much he loved basketball. Then he ended with one final line. Someday, we will all be reunited with Timothy. Amen. I thought about that part a lot. In my baffled adolescent mind, something about the words made sense. Just in all the wrong ways. The whole experience never felt real. Dad had promised to take me to Disney for my 10th birthday. He promised to take me to a bar on my 21st. We had plans. Dad would come back, he always did. Who would walk my sister down the aisle? Who would be there at graduation? How could someone so crucial to my existence just disappear? I told myself the priest had to be right. Dad was around. We just needed to find a way to see him again. In the weeks that followed, phone calls and visits from extended family and friends started to flicker out. My mom went back to work. My brother and sister went back to college. Our family routines became abandoned. Holidays turned into a hassle chore, at best, and we never really went on vacation again. Most days it was just me at home, alone with a basketball hoop and a brick wall. I read about death a lot on the internet. Some people said there were ways to see the dead. Some people said they were always with us. But nobody had much information on how to bring them back. I checked everywhere. Most websites talked about the dangers of reanimation and the reasons why it's a bad idea. I ignored them and kept looking. Eventually, months after the funeral, I found the answer to my questions. The website called itself FixU.org. And I can still remember the neon lettering and corny graphics on my crappy computer monitor. The site had two tabs: Incantations and Contact Us. I clicked the former and waited about 20 minutes for it to load on our dial-up connection. Red text appeared after a moment. FixU employs both technology and spell work to enable communication between living souls and the dead. All information is to be used with extreme caution. Please view the next page to see if you qualify for disclosure. I clicked past the warning without even hesitating. The following page showed a form requesting my name, age, and address. I entered it all and selected next. A green check mark appeared. I guess I met the requirements. FixU requires a specific object to be cursed. This object should have a specific connection to both the individual conducting the spell and the individual who has passed away. Please locate it before continuing. I grabbed my basketball and scrolled down the page. Dad taught me the infamous family hook shot just 2 months prior. Repeat the following words 6 times aloud. Hold the object and spin it once for every repetition. The phrase seemed to be Latin. I struggled through the pronunciation and did as told. It felt weird. But it was not like anybody was home to judge me. Search Lazarum. Disere Lazarum. Nothing happened. I repeated the phrase 6 times exactly. I searched for a non-existent next button on the website. Frustration built up like a powder keg. Now what? I shouted to my empty room. The website seemed to respond. I did not click anything. And yet, the page refreshed. That seemed pretty crazy to a young kid on the internet those days. A cartoonish genie with a word bubble is displayed on the screen. Tonight, you will dream about your loved one. Think about them as much as possible. Hold the object close. If the spell is done correctly, and the individual would like to communicate, you will make first contact in your dreams. I followed the instructions and tucked myself into bed at 9 o'clock. Excitement replaced frustration. I clutched the basketball harder than ever before. I thought about all of the best times with my father, at the park, at the mall, at the movies. That night, when I fell asleep, I did dream about him. I dreamed that Dad lived in a cabin somewhere out in the woods. I visited on a dark, rainy night, and he explained everything once we got inside. My mom and he had gotten into a fight. She just didn't want him around anymore. He had to hide from the government, and nobody could know where he lived. Death never even became a topic of conversation. It felt too ridiculous to even suggest. Dad sat right in front of me. I told him about the school, the upcoming summer, and everything that was going on in my life. He smiled and listened. He made me dinner. And then, as suddenly as the dream started, it ended. I woke up in a cold sweat and cried for an hour. The horrible teasing effect of the whole situation was the worst part. It seemed so real. He looked exactly the way I remembered. I wondered whether the website made me dream about him. Doubt left my mind as the memories welled up in my head. We just needed a little more time. I rushed back to the old computer in my bedroom immediately after breakfast. I loaded up FixU.org and waited for the dial-up modem to connect. When it did, I nearly fell off my chair. You have completed level 1 of contact. At 2 o'clock Tuesday morning, wait outside the address given. Bring your cursed object. At that time, a chariot will arrive, and you will be able to make contact with your loved one in the living plane. I bit my lip through the whole weekend. In retrospect, I should have told my mother. But the story seemed too unbelievable. I knew she would take away the computer the second she heard it, and that could not happen. I could not live wondering whether there was a way to see my father again. The alarm woke me up at 1:45 on Tuesday morning. That gave me enough time to change out of my PJs and slip outside through the back door. It was cold that night. Bits of white snow slipped down from the sky in what must have record time. A blizzard canceled school for the next day. That only added to my excitement. I could not wait to tell Dad. Maybe he could stay over for the day. I shivered in my father's boots while waiting on the front porch. I hoped they still fit. I thought he might need them, wherever he was going. So many questions flooded my mind. I made sure to remember all of them. We would not be dreaming this time. Who knew when we could talk again? I heard the squeal of shaky brakes and snow crumpled under tires at exactly 2 a.m. The street sat about 20 feet in front of our house. A flash of blue stuck out between hallowed trees and white waves of sleet. The van slowed down as it approached our house. And then it stopped. I looked around. I stared for a minute or two. Nobody seemed to move. Something about the situation started to feel sketchy. Could the dream have been a coincidence? A door to the van popped open. The quietness of the snowstorm seemed to add to the eeriness. A white light somewhere inside illuminated an empty and quiet cabin. I wondered whether Dad sat in the back or the front. Was he driving? Where should I sit? I walked toward the car. The hill in front of my house was perfect for sledding and not much else. I slipped a couple of times going down. On the second or third tumble, I heard another van door open. Then my mother's shrill voice pierced the night. Matthew. Oh my God. No. Matthew. Get back in this house. Now. Now. The next few moments were a shock to all parties involved. The white light turned off inside the van. The door slammed shut. The driver slid down the street like a burglar leaving a crime scene at the sight of my mother flying out of the house and screaming like a banshee. After yelling, screaming, cursing, and calling the police, she finally asked me what the hell happened. I told her about Fix You. I told her about my dreams, and my plan to meet Dad and talk to him one last time. She looked terrified. You see, there was a story on the local news that night. Several children in the area had recently been abducted. The newscasters said they did not have much information available as of yet. The police had not even narrowed down a list of suspects. The only lead cops had at the time still gives me the feeling of ice water running down my spine. The individual lured young victims online.